What do you do to make the case internally or with clients or whomever to that we have to cover that entire journey? And it's not just about nurturing, but you're also trying to nurture with content.
Yeah, definitely. I think making the case internally is all about just what you said, building that ecosystem where a user or a prospect doesn't necessarily have to leave to get the information they need so that you are keeping them in your brand bubble to nurture them through that. That said, I think it's important to also think about what they're doing offsite. Incorporate offsite touch points into your journey considerations so that when it makes sense to maybe link to a third party review site or link to a third party affiliate review or video tutorial, something like this, to appeal to those lower funnel, lower stages, to appeal to things that they're looking for, like trust and validation and testimonials, making sure that's covered. Again, something on site, but also nurturing that journey off site. That can be incorporating responding to reviews into your content strategy, reaching out to outside influencers, even contacts that may be interested in guest posting, really making sure that you're not only creating content that is going to hit the right notes at each stage of the journey, but also that it comes from someone that person's going to trust at that point. There's a ton that a brand can do internally, putting content out that can do that. But in some cases, and I think even as customers, we would agree, I'm not going to trust one source. And that's where spreading out some of that will help as well. That said, if there's a question your buyer has throughout the funnel, put an answer to it on your website, because you do still want to offer that. They can go and find their own second opinion or what have you as well. But from an SEO perspective, from a journey perspective, make sure you're answering those questions, whether that's a simple FAQ, whether that's a whole blog post. Even I've seen nurture email blasts that really hammer home a specific pain point and why we solve that. And that becomes its own campaign, its own funnel. And that's based off one bullet point in a huge, massive persona research. All that data collection is just like a gold mine that you can then pluck things out of and just disperse throughout the journey as it makes sense. And of course, and as we touch on more CRO, understanding if you made the right call or if you need to adjust something is obviously the next point.
If you're looking to really think about those personas, don't bucket everybody into one is really the thing. Because you can write
Oh
something
yeah.
that's good for beginner and it starts to perform well in organic search, you potentially have turned off your expert class reader. So
Right.
there's a lot of
Right.
ways that they should be thinking about. But do you ever bring that in? And when you're benchmarking where you're at, I guess like when you're performing a content inventory or audit?
Yeah, totally. And this was actually something I was doing just this week and looking into an issue that actually arose from our support team that came up as a common question around the product, something more technical in terms of web dev. And approaching that article from, we have a help article on it, for instance, but we're looking to make something a little more public facing to explain this to an audience. So it's taking this concept that is very technical, very approachable to a web dev, very unapproachable to maybe a digital marketer or someone on the UX, the design side, the experience side, maybe. And I think that's where some other kind of on-page organizational things come in handy. I love using table of contents. I think that's a really great way to take a big general, call it pillar piece, what is piece, and breaking that up and going deeper and deeper as you go. And so when the user gets there, they find it via search because you've got a lot of content there, the click-throughs there. And when they get there, they can see that table of contents and say, I don't even know what this is, so I'm going to start here. Or they can say, I already know what this is and I've been using it, but I have this specific problem. So I'm going to click down to section 5 here. And that's where I can pick up. Also love table contents because they're going to help with that engagement. You've got people clicking, you're jumping them down the page to scroll. As we get into KPIs, some of those metrics will pop up. So that can also give you some insights into what's worth breaking out. When we talk priority, you can go from a really general pillar piece, kind of measure and analyze that traffic and say, all right, everyone's clicking on what is. Another 30% of traffic is clicking on such and such section, subtopic that we cover in maybe a couple hundred words here. Let's blow that out. Let's do 1,000-word, maybe medium form, more in-depth explainer there and appeal more to that audience, see how that performs, understand where that fits in the journey and take it from there. So opportunity never stops.
I'll often find that successful journeys, either in a one session conversion or a multi-session version, will meander across the homepage and the About Us page and some of these other pages where somebody's doing research on getting that some social proof or kind of the bigger picture. So how do you measure that? Do you look for
Mhm.
those like unplanned detours? Also, they could go to a page that nobody knows. It would just happen to be a link at
Yeah.
the top of it.
Yep. Yeah. And that's where session recordings, I think, are just so valuable. And we've heard this from so many of our customers as well. And just that, hey, I never thought someone would want to click that. And it's buried at the bottom of my page. Let's move it up. And suddenly 50% more people can experience this journey that's more ideal. Those are great things to look into. I think you mentioned offsite as well. That's obviously trickier to track, but I think again, if you're also active offsite and you can try to own some of that, if that's including links on your site that will take people to your reviews or other third party things where you can see them, you can at least see them leave. It's also about, depending on your organization, setting up attribution in something like HubSpot, where at a contact level, especially in B2B and with deal tracking, you can see which pieces of content have been touched, or even from an account or an industry or specialty perspective. If certain contacts categorized as X are really loving this case study and this blog and whatever else, all right, let's package that up and let's send that out to all these new prospects. Or let's maybe revamp our journey so that all that information is right on one page. And now suddenly they're not clicking around and we can convert these people in 2 pages as opposed to 5. All of that's, I think, going to be helpful.
How do you think about gated content and its role,
Yeah.
or tools and honeypots ideas like that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm keeping, I saw Craig's question here too about B2B sites with multiple points of conversion and that. And I think that's cool too to think about like levels of conversion. Is this a micro conversion where it's just somewhere on their journey where we're getting a touch point, we're collecting contact info, we're keeping them engaged, we're going to drip them with the next newsletter or whatever? Or is this a big conversion? This is like they're clicking book a demo or they're like ordering, I don't know, their car or the big, more expensive purchase that takes a little longer to settle on. Or I guess B2B, that's a bad example, something of that nature. If you treat those as maybe mini funnels, that's one way to think of it. But just measuring conversion values can be tricky, especially across platforms, but thinking of weighting your conversions of what does it mean when someone downloads a piece of gated content versus goes to our contact page or the demo page or something like that. And even looking at the content you're gating, what's the goal there? Is it just to collect their email? Is it to get them to do something else, to take that piece of content and then come back to your site and do something, different with it, or your app or your tool or your product or whatever? B2C, is it so that they buy your coffee and then make a bunch of it and use all the filters and have to come back and buy more? Or even the sort of offline conversions can play in it as well, I think. Yeah, again, I think a lot of those data visualization tools really help because it's also going to tell you what someone wishes they could click on or what they're looking for. I really love user feedback campaigns as well. And that's another feature we have where you can set up just a little chat box to pop up on a time delay or on certain pages or for certain users that says, hey, what are you thinking? Is this giving you what you need? What are you looking for? What brought you here today? What would help you convert in more elegant language? And then use those to, again, inform those optimization strategies.
I think the question was, how does funnel analysis translate, and thanks, Craig, to B2B where there isn't a single point of conversion, whereas this could convert on over hundreds of pages. And this is very common. This could be in the form of a phone in or call tracking scenario. It could be in the
Yeah.
form of a run of site, like you mentioned, newsletter sign up or a demo. It could be or any of these different things, or it could just be you have a similar CTA across a lot of landing pages or universally on your site. By the way, if you truly have, let's just say 170 disparate funnels that have no connective tissue, that's a great problem to have. There will be some trends, but if you have a large pool of possible funnels, it's your job to connect them into buckets. So I would like to pair them and say, okay, these are the ones that I would group here. These are the ones I would group here. And that's how I would do funnel analysis individually and then as groups once I figure out those trends. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I think a cool strategy too. Even looking again, I don't know the details, but if the conversion is some sort of gated download, if that's what we're seeing in hundreds of places, then you can go into and look at which if you have that contact attribution or can somehow get this info, try to group those assets as well. This is what all the marketing directors downloaded, and this is what all the the finance guys downloaded, and this is what all the legal people downloaded, maybe something like that. And then you can say, hey, is it worth it for me to have all these, like you said, disparate conversions and funnels, or should I just package these up? And then all of a sudden I've got, this great marketing resources page or collection of things. And then that's maybe a much more valuable lead for you. And that's going to be a more valuable conversion for whoever finds that, because now they didn't just find the one gated asset, they found the one they were looking for, and then they found the next four that they didn't even know they were looking for. And then you've just further ingrained them into all of that. And that kind of streamlines your funnel as well, because you are bringing them to a more central location specific to their industry